Manny is an intellectual, very intelligent person. We saw him grow up into a young man, an intelligent young man. You know, Pablo is not like that. That's not the Pablo that we know and love, you know. I just miss him so much.
My name is Pablo Garcia. I've been incarcerated for almost 16 years for a horrendous crime that I did not commit.
On December 19th, 2006, Teresa Reyes was found deceased in her Bronx apartment. The apartment was ransacked. $20,000 had been stolen. Then, the case went cold. But on April 7th, 2008, a DNA match leads police to Mario Castro. 7 days later, Castro tells police he was with Ramon Acevedo and Joshua Torres. He does not mention Pablo Garcia.
Remember, at trial, he was presumed innocent and they had the burden of proof. And what they used to prove his guilt is, one, they used the testimony of accomplices who were unreliable as a matter of law, who had obtained benefits that the jury never really understood that they had obtained.
Over a year later, on June 18th, 2009, Acevedo has his first interview with police and does not mention Pablo.
You know, they have two people who were there, and Torres is not one of them, so he's got to give him somebody, right?
The next day, Torres names Pablo in an interview with police in exchange for immunity.
That was a convenient name that he knew that he was associated with these other folks. That could have been somebody who was a believable suspect. The way that we're taught to interrogate people or to deal with people who we consider to be suspects is we are not looking to test or get information. We're looking just to confirm what we believe is the truth. And if you're on board with us with everything, good, now we're going to have a deal.
4 days after that, Acevedo is re-interviewed by police. This time, he names Pablo. He later receives a plea deal.
Right, so their credibility was very, very questionable. They had a strong incentive to lie, to implicate him, and that was never really brought out to the jury.
Though the defense attorney did try to bring out that there was some kind of agreement, the defense attorney was blocked by the judge.
They actually indicted him based only on that accomplice testimony without any corroboration at all. So that's a huge failing. This prosecution never should have started from the inception because of that error.
2 years later, on October 21st, 2011, the state claims Pablo's DNA was found on a single piece of duct tape from the crime scene.
Pablo Garcia is excluded from all other samples in this case, other than this one piece of duct tape. And his DNA is not detected anywhere else. And that's always very concerning because the DNA component of this, or the biological evidence, is just one piece.
The state used low copy number testing, or LCN, a controversial method to analyze the DNA.
The OCME, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in New York, was using low copy number testing, also called high sensitivity testing, to artificially inflate the quantity of DNA in a given sample so as to make it testable.
One of the problems with low copy number or high sensitivity testing is that it is replicate testing, and it also has a higher contamination rate, because you're increasing the amount of DNA that you want to see, but you're also increasing the background amount of DNA that could be in your sample.
In 2017, LCN testing is banned in New York after being deemed scientifically unreliable.
The second thing is that he was convicted through the use of something called the forensic statistical tool. FST is really just probabilistic software that is designed to generate a probability ratio. Now, the result in Pablo's case was particularly low. Using that software, they got a probability ratio of only 586 to 1.
It's an infinite scale. It goes out to, quintillion times more likely or octillion times more likely. So when you look at that, you're like 586 is kind of closer to zero than a million, a billion, or a quintillion. So if you're very close to zero, it's not very good because you're not sure about the answer.
Also, in 2017, New York stops using the forensic statistical tool. for its unreliability and lack of transparency when it comes to the algorithm used.
FST is nonsense. It was a database that was proprietary, designed by the OCME. It does not account for racial similarities or differences. The reason that these tests have stopped being used and the reason that the courts have deemed that they're unreliable is because they are.
The two key witnesses in this case changed their stories and received deals. The jury was never told they had incentives to lie. DNA from the crime scene was duplicated using a discredited method and then analyzed using a flawed and discredited algorithm. Based on this evidence, Pablo was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life.
Always attached to me. I guess because at the time he was the baby of the family. This is his oldest brother, his sister, and this is him and this is I. And you would tell him, all right, Manny, we're going to take a picture. That's his pose all the time. I'm like, but why you always pose like this? And it's just something that, I don't know. So he loved skateboarding, liked to dress different from everyone. And that's the way he always been.
The group of friends we had were all punk rocks, goths, Liberty spikes, turquoise hair, ripped fishnets. There was this image that he had, and people just assumed he was mean, but he was so kind. And he would express that in his poetry and his artwork in school.
Like, this is someone who has stayed committed to moving through the world from a place of love, even in spite of their circumstances, and someone who has such a bright light, who wants to do so much good in the world, who's so altruistic, and who has been stuck, who has been like essentially like in this cage for 16 years.
He's so freaking loved. He's so infinitely loved, and it's so hard for him. He's like, I know. Like all of us know, right? It's just here on the surface. And I know it's hard when you're in a place like that.
I just miss him so much. You know, I feel I failed him, you know, because I didn't have the means to get a good attorney for him. I'd give anything. It makes me feel inadequate that I can't do more, you know. But I know that he was wronged. I know that in my heart, with everything, with every fiber in my body, I know that.
I remember when you found out that I could draw. You encouraged this gift when I didn't give it my all. I had the imagination, but you gave me the shove. You encouraged me with patience, excitement, and love. I remember the infectious sound of your laugh. You sounded like a cackled clown that'll never run out of gas. The only time I witnessed you cry, when I was wrongfully incarcerated and you couldn't understand why. I remember the times I visited my father and it felt like I was alone. Until you picked me up or I came back and I felt like I was home. There are many qualities that exemplifies who you were. You chose to love 3 children as you loved her, my mother. You never made us feel like a burden or a bother as you took on the role with love of our Father. On behalf of everyone, thank you for all that you have done. Now rest in peace. Love, Manny, your son.